Ideally, a mobile application access only what it needs to do its job. However, in the ecosystem of free mobile tools used for business, this principle is frequently inverted. The data flow often extends far beyond the user's immediate intent. Introduction. When we examine the threat landscape for modern enterprises, we often overlook the endpoints in our pockets. We operate under the assumption that App Store review processes act as a complete security filter. They do not. Today, we are analyzing the specific mechanisms by which free mobile applications introduce data latency and liability into corporate networks. We will examine the architecture of permission overreach, the hidden role of third-party software development kits, SDKs, and the regulatory exposure businesses face when employees introduce unvetted software onto managed devices. This is a technical breakdown of why free comes at cost to organizational security posture. Section 1. The principle of least privileges versus permission overreach. The foundational concept in information security is the principle of least privilege. An entity should have access to only the data and resources necessary for its legitimate purpose. In the context of mobile operating systems, an app should request access strictly and on a case-by-case basis, providing an explanation of why that access is required. However, analysis of the current app marketplace reveals a systematic deviation from this standard. Recent data indicates that over 75% of mobile applications handle personally identifiable information. A significant portion of these are utilities that have no functional requirement for such data. Consider the standard PDF scanner application used by a remote employee to function. It strictly needs access to the camera and local storage. Yet, audit logs frequently show requests for contacts, precise location data, and microphone access. When an employee grants these permissions, often habitually to bypass system prompts, they are effectively authorizing an external entity to map internal organizational hierarchies through contacts, lists, or track movement patterns through GPS data. The risk is not contained solely within the code written by the app developer. Modern mobile development relies heavily on third-party software development kits, or SDKs, to provide functionality such as analytics, crash reporting, and advertising. When an employee installs a free productivity tool, they are not just installing the code from that specific vendor, they are installing every SDK embedded within that application. These SDKs often operate with the same level of permission granted to the host app. If the user grants location access to a weather app, the embedded advertising SDK also achieves access to the location data. Research from 2025 suggests that approximately 35% of iOS apps fail to properly disclose the full extent of sensitive data access, often due to these opaque supply chains. The developer may not even be fully aware of the data exfiltration capabilities of the SDKs they have integrated to monetize their free product. This creates a shadow IT problem on the device level. The SDKs can engage in cross-app tracking, building a profile of the user that combines professional and personal behaviors. For a manager, this means sensitive corporate data handled on the device, even if not directly accessed by the SDK, exists in an environment where behavioral data is being siphoned to entities outside the company's contractual control. The app is doing what it needs to do its job, but the SDK is doing what it needs to do its job, profiling the user. The implications extend beyond data leakage into the realm of legal liability. Regulatory frameworks such as GDPR in Europe and CCPA in California and industry-specific mandates like HIPAA impose strict requirements on data controllers. When an organization allows employees to use personal devices for work, a buyout policy, or permits unvetted apps on corporate devices, the organization retains responsibility for the security of the business data processed on those endpoints. If a free mobile app used for business purposes collects client data without valid consent or transfers that data across borders to non-compliant jurisdictions, the business is the entity at risk of enforcement action. Regulators are increasingly treating businesses as responsible for the entire data lifecycle. We are seeing a trend where app stores are rejecting large numbers of apps for privacy non-compliance. However, the speed of app development outpaces the speed of review. A compliant app can become non-compliant with a single update that introduces a new trace tracking SDK. If your employee uses a free translation app for sensitive client emails, and that app stores the text on an unsecured server to train a machine learning model, you have effectively caused a data breach. The free price tag is subsidized by the data. If the data belongs to your clients, you are paying with assets you do not have the right to spend. Section 4. Technical mitigation strategies. To align with the principle of least privilege, organizations must move beyond passive policies. Technical controls are required. Mobile device management, or MDM, solutions should be configured to separate corporate data from personal data. This involves containerization, where business apps run in a sandbox that cannot communicate with the free, unvetted apps installed by the user. Furthermore, application vetting must be rigorous. Managers need to audit the privacy label and request explanations for permissions that seem extraneous. If an app cannot justify why it needs access to context to function as a calculator, it should be blocked. At the network level, the decision to grant or deny a request should not rest solely on the end user, who prioritizes convenience, but on the administrator, who prioritizes data sovereignty. The functionality of a mobile device is defined by its software, but its security is defined by its restrictions. We must enforce standards where apps access only what they need to do their job, and nothing more. Review your current mobile device policies, identify where free tools are being utilized in critical workflows, and replace them with enterprise licensed solutions where data ownership is contractually defined. For more technical breakdowns on mobile security architecture and permission management, subscribe to this channel.